So we welcome you to Candid Conversations. This is a bit of a round table, even though we're kind of a half circle.
Semicircle.
Semicircle,
Yeah,
yep. And I want to introduce these two amazing people that are with me. This is Hollis and this is Sarah, and they are soon to be married. They will share in their nuptials in a couple of weeks. And actually, I get to do their wedding, which is very exciting. I serve a lot of different roles here at Back Bay Mission. Not only am I executive director, clean up messes, also do weddings.
Yes,
for the staff,
He
right?
moonlights
Yeah.
as
I moonlight as a pastor. So I just want all of you to know that. We have to have some humor in days like these, right? But I'm really excited to have Hollis and Sarah here today because Hollis has been a police officer for how long?
Started in '03, so 18 years.
18 years serving as a police officer, originally from the great city of Detroit,
Detroit,
Michigan.
That's a mispronunciation.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. That's the way many of my Detroit friends say it. Sarah, you originally hailed from Florida and all over the place,
all over.
right?
I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Like Johnny Cash.
Yeah, Johnny Cash.
Mm-hmm.
So excited to have them there. And what we really want to talk about today is policing and kind of get Hollis's viewpoint on several issues, especially around people experiencing homelessness, or we're trying to kind of change the narrative and say people who are unsheltered.
Unsheltered.
Yeah. So unsheltered folks. And so Hollis, kind of right out of the gate, thank you again for being here. And I think it was really wonderful that your captain,
Yes.
chief,
Captain. Dykes, yes.
yeah, was really supportive of you sharing this information and sharing this interview. So thank you. But I want to ask you first off, what motivated you to be a police officer? And did you always want to be a police officer? And how did you get to where you're at?
So I did not always want to be a police officer. I was actually working in healthcare. I was an anesthesia tech working in the hospitals, and I had a part-time job working in a group home. And it was a parenting teen group home, so it was young girls 13 to 16 parenting. And whenever they would run away, we would call the Chicago Police Department and have to do a incident report for runaway. And it was through the time working there that I would just have, I guess, kind of candid conversations with a Chicago police officer. And we just would talk about, police, inner city, the interactions with them. And finally, he said, well, you certainly can't change anything on the outside. If you want to see change, you should become a police officer and be the change you want to see. So that kind of planted the seed about transitioning into law enforcement. And then it was September 11th hit, and then I was like, I could really do more for my community. And then it was that, along with those conversations, that compelled me to become a police officer.
Yeah, that interesting that that individual quoted Gandhi, right? Be the change you want to see in the world, right? Which I think is an really important quote for a lot of people. I know it's been, for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
I think for myself too.
Yeah.
So have you always wanted to be a police officer's wife?
No.
No.
I have a master's in criminal justice. It's statistically not a good match to date and or marry a cop.
Right.
They go through a lot. I think people don't understand, like, just stories I've heard of him working in, like, one of the worst parts of Detroit. Just the stories I hear that he tells me, it almost takes away a little bit of your humanity or the things don't shock you anymore. Like, things don't bother them the same way that they bother us. There's a high suicide rate. There's a high depression, but then they don't talk about it. So no, I never saw myself dating and or marrying a cop, but he wowed me on the homeless detail.
And also, it's like, I don't think that those things are specific to police officers per se. I do understand what you're saying, but like, it's like by beholding things, you become those things. So if you watch television, and let's say if you witness, 100,000 murders by the time you're 10,
You're desensitized.
that, yes, you become a different person than who you would have become if you hadn't have witnessed all these things or these traumatic events. So, you know, it's the degradation of just moral goals in our society from the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like we've been studying Genesis, and once Adam and Eve sinned and were expelled from the garden, like up until that time, they had never witnessed death of anything. Not a flower, not a leaf falling from a tree, not an insect. So when he saw that, I can only imagine, I might be interjecting, but like it was death seen for the first time. And he probably grieved a flower petal way more than we grieve someone that we see sitting underneath the I-110 in stress. You know, so we have all become kind of desensitized in our own way.
Well, I think you make a really good point. I kind of look at the story of Adam and Eve and I say it's a story of innocence lost.
Yeah.
And especially the first death they experienced, honestly, was like the story, the narrative tells us that God killed an animal and knit together the leather, the clothing, the skin of the animal to cover their nakedness, which was innocence lost, shame, right? And I think the whole idea is, you're right, they had not seen death. They were told to name the animals. They were friends with the animals. They weren't using the animals for food. And here, God's self kills the animal, right, to cover their nakedness. And then the first murder they really experienced was Cain and Abel, right out of the gate.
Yeah.
You know.
That's
So yeah, and it is. There's a sense of desensitization. There's a sense of trauma, right? And having been a part of the Phoenix Police Department Advisory Community Board, I kind of had a much deeper understanding of what police officers go through, and what police wives face too, because we brought the wives in, or the spouses, to talk about husbands, or, you know, for the female police officers, what is it like for you to be married to or in relationship with somebody who's a police officer who puts himself on the line. Now it's interesting, your degree, granted, could be a deterrent, but could also be positive, right?
Yeah.
Because there's certain things you get about the work that he has to do.
Yeah, I think I understand it because I worked in law enforcement in Arizona, so I think I get it to a point, but it is hard, like when you're talking to him or whatever, and he's like, all of a sudden, like the phone disconnects, and you don't hear from him for a couple hours. Like, gosh, I hope he's okay. The other day, Kirsten and I were out doing outreach. I come around the corner, there's like a million lights on, and there he is. And he's like, his arm's bleeding, and you know, as a spouse, you want to like, get out of the car and give him a Band-Aid. But I'm thinking, boy, if I jump out of this car right now and give him a Band-Aid, I will have just taken away all his masculinity. He'll get
Right.
I think he'll just have a fit. But you see him standing
Especially
there.
if it's a Mickey Mouse Band.
Yeah, like I probably have some Dora the Explorer Band-Aids from my kids. And,
SpongeBob.
yeah,
You know.
and you want to get out and like love on him, but then you realize when he comes home that, you know, you got to let him kind of decompress. Yeah. We have good talks. We pray together. So I think all those things kind of help bring him back home with us instead of his mind still being with that.
Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned, and I believe this is how you met, right? That he was the homeless liaison police officer for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years.
Oh, yeah, maybe a year and a half or so.
Okay.
2 years, not quite sure, but it was about a year and a half, I would guess.
Yeah, and those of you who have watched these know that that's the population that Sarah works with. She rehouses people who are homeless, does case management, fantastic work. So talk a little bit about your experience with the homeless population and what that was like.
I guess my experience early on as a child, my grandfather was always homeless. He's just always homeless.